Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. First order, we'll go through, review the agenda. I will make one amendment to the agenda here, but tonight we're going to go and have public comments and commissioners' response to those. We'll approve the June minutes. And we're going to have a discussion on the prohibited car camping contract. We'll take a short break. We'll have a camera update from Captain Meisel, and then chief's reports, and then we'll have some closing comments. I want to amend the agenda. I'd like to, right after the review of the agenda, I want to introduce our three new commissioners. So we'll add that to the agenda. So if anybody have any other additions or to the agenda or changes? If I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume the agenda was approved. So I want to welcome our three new commissioners. We have Silverio,
Yep.
Marquette.
Mogart.
Sorry, I'm going to get the names right.
It's okay.
And then we have Edward McClellan from the HRC, who's our liaison for them, and Will Davey.
Thank you.
Welcome. Glad to have you guys join us. So I will turn this over to Edward for public comments.
One public comment. Anyone else? Going, gone. Have 3 minutes. Joe Tyndall, I think you already know the drill on this.
So, 3 minutes. Okay. So, Joe Tyndall, I'm former commissioner. Okay, so now that I am out of reach of your so-called working agreement, isn't that a nice Orwellian title for a set of rules to restrict free speech? Talking as a private citizen, I won't be dragged into a sideshow about censorship. 4 years ago, when I became this commission's token progressive, I asked the outgoing token liberal why he did not seek a second term. He told me it was a waste of time and described being interrupted, corrected, scolded, and otherwise neutralized. My experience being silenced has been similar. The following applies to the 6 people who voted for suppression of speech and to Mr. Goring, who was absent in December but made his feelings known. Either you cherish the Enlightenment principles enshrined in our Bill of Rights, or at the risk of tripping Godwin's law, you are a fascist, a Nazi, a totalitarian. I have gifts for you. Pass these down, please. Thank you. And we'll pass some of these too. I have gifts for you, but no respect. This began when an anonymous special snowflake had her feelings offended by a verifiable truth I spoke. Being a capable and powerful third-wave intersectional feminist, social justice warrior, she found a white knight to protect Daddy's little princess while remaining unidentified. Congratulations, ladies. I can no longer trust any woman in this room at that time. Do we prefer the secret witnesses of the Inquisition? Was she frightened by words? Did she retreat to her safe space? Was her narrative threatened? This malignancy has infected and poisoned college campuses, the internet, and politics. If you haven't figured it out, if you wish to maintain democracy, the solution to free speech you don't like is more free speech, rather than repression. Political correctness, whether coming from the regressive left or from the right, is cancer. To placate our special snowflake, a public shaming was required, and Bob, you filled that role admirably. In the immortal words of Forrest Gump, stupid is what stupid does. I am now calling you out to defend your position. We can define a statement and debate. You're good at personal attacks,
20 seconds.
but I don't think you can defend your belief using words, facts, and ideas. Because this group has failed to uphold the public trust, I will henceforth televise these proceedings with analysis. That, my friends, is how free speech works. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends our public comment portion.
Okay, so now we're going to open it up to Commissioner's response. And I'd like to start now as we go around, and maybe I will go around the table, and if you would like to say something, please say so. If not, just say pass, and that way we give everybody an opportunity if they'd like to discuss anything that we have. So, anybody want to begin? Or just start with Steve? Do you mind to be on?
Sure. And for the new members, my name is Steve McIntyre, and I'm on the Civilian Review Board as well. So many of my comments are from that perspective as well. So I just want to share with the board that I intend to come back at one of our next board meetings and make a motion to review a few policies that are either not on the work plan or are ambiguous and feel like they should be looked at. So I'll put that together soon. I was absent at the CRB meeting this month as I was in Baltimore. So I don't have a report regarding this month's meeting, but I do as to last month because it was after our joint meeting last month. And at that meeting, it involved the case regarding chain of custody and evidence issues associated with policy number 804.4. And some of the board members believe that this policy is a bit ambiguous and should be looked at, especially as to working with civilians regarding evidence. In this case, a retired EPD officer was consulted in an attempt to recover a VIN number from a motorcycle, and there was little guidance in the policy relating to consulting external folks to process evidence, or at what point a civilian should be consulted over the crime lab. So I may be bringing that one back as well. That's all I have. Thanks.
Terry?
Pass.
Edward?
Pass.
Bob?
Pass.
Will?
Pass.
Go around the table.
Pass.
No, thanks.
Well, I will just make a comment. Always welcome to have public comments at the meeting. And also, I would like to recognize we have a couple of Cub Scouts, or Boy Scouts, Boy Scouts in our audience that are working on one of their merit badges, Carter Robbins and Caleb Robbins. I want to thank you guys for coming today, along with their leader, Brett Parker.
I have nothing.
Okay, perfect. Well, then let's move on to approval of June minutes. Everybody get a chance to review those. Comments?
I think there's, well, it's a question, maybe.
Okay.
At the bottom of the page there where nominations, it says nominations for chair of the police commission. And I see that the first one is Ms. Surratt nominated Mr. Whalen as chair, and then Mr. Walker seconded. And then there was a closing, but the next one is Ms. Surratt nominated Mr. Gearing as vice chair, but there's no second. I think that I had made a nomination and Ms. Surratt seconded, but I don't know if a second is required. If so, I believe we had it. It was either Ms. Surratt or me or both. So.
It's not required, and I couldn't catch it, so I'll fix it.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just want to make sure we were,
So you made the motion,
yeah.
and,
Ms. Surratt seconded it.
okay, perfect.
That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the minutes? I will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Oh,
Bill, this is Scott. I said aye as well.
okay, thank you. And by the way, we have both Scott and Marty are on the phone today.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes. Yep. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the minutes pass. So now we're going to talk about, continue our conversation on prohibited car camping. We all got the contract in our packet to review, and I'd like to ask Sergeant Williams to join us at the table for our discussion. So now we'll start the queue. If anybody has any questions, I don't know if you want to start with anything, Sergeant, to lead us into this, or?
Yeah, I don't. No, I don't have anything to add to get us launched out of the gate here.
start with you if anybody wants to talk about the contract.
Mr. Chairman, I think we covered this real well. We had an opportunity for people to come at several meetings and speak, and of course we did have people that spoke, and the people that were concerned were also in the audience that didn't speak. So I think the process was working well, the transparency and the way we addressed the situation. Each person is going to have their own opinion about this ordinance and whether or not it is something we should or shouldn't have in Eugene, but that's not our purview. Our purview is to see that it's done and enforced evenly and fairly, and I think we've demonstrated that that process is working, so I'm very much in favor of approving that if we are voting on it tonight.
I put myself in the queue, and Marty and Scott, you'll have to let me know if you guys want to go in the queue. I'll try to take breaks between people. Well, I had a few questions in looking at the contract, and I'm not sure, Sergeant, if you could answer a lot of these, but I just want to kind of bring them up. The program on page 2 of the contract, I guess Exhibit B, it talks about the program's goals, and then it also talks about that there's a program evaluation.
Yes, sir.
And I guess my comments or questions are, are these goals, are we tracking to see if this program really is achieving some of these goals, or is it, are we doing the evaluation part of it yet of the contract?
We had a long discussion about that at a joint meeting between a number of people last year when we were looking at contract negotiations. And no, we're not conducting the follow-up that's required by the contract. There was a fairly strong group consensus that the workload required to take such detailed analysis was something that would be very difficult for any of the organizations to take on, and that a portion of this contract that needs to be rewritten is evaluating and coming up with evaluation methods that are realistic and attainable. Probably a simpler, less arduous process, something that we're able to pull stats from more easily. These matrix were written in a long time ago, and I don't know, I couldn't tell you whether it's ever been done. So no, that certainly is a problem area of the contract. It's one that Tim Westerman and I and Lieutenant Tinseth have talked about, as well as other folks that have been involved along the way. And it's an area that we certainly are looking at to figure that out. I don't have an answer for you what it's going to look like, but it is an area that needs to be corrected, and we're on the same page with that one.
Yeah, because in looking at this, I mean, there was a lot of subjectivity to some of them. I mean, the one about citation reduction, well, that also has something to do with your staffing ability and being able to go out and handle some of these calls. So I mean, you could have a reduction in citations just because you don't have the manpower or person power, I guess I should say, to go out and handle these calls.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, the one other question I have is that it talks about under the process about the facilitator getting back to the police department in 2 days. Is that a realistic, or does it happen, or is that something that, should that be reworked in the new contract to where you're...
Yep, that's another area that we've also identified and had a fair amount of discussion between myself, Keith, and again, Roxanne and Tim, who were all in having conversations about this process, Lieutenant Tinseth again. There are times when we probably meet that timeline. I would say more often than not, we're not meeting that one either. Ideally, in a perfect world, we would be, because we want to be providing that service all the time, constantly. The reality is that other jobs get in the way. We have more complaints one week, or we don't have any complaints. It really is an ebb and flow, and we need to write in. It needs to read where there's a little bit more gray area, where ideally we're shooting for this, but per the contract, this is what's acceptable. And that too is another area that we've talked about, and is still under discussion as we try to get this pushed through for the next contract. It may be that we have all of these areas fixed for this next contract. It may be that we buy it off one or two get those corrected, and then begin talks for the next contract as well. What that exactly is going to look like, I don't entirely know. And with the interest of the commission in this topic, we'd be happy to report back on where we landed with the final language for this year. My expectation, and it certainly was 6 months ago, is that there are issues here that are sensitive enough that I did not have an expectation that we would have everything fixed for this next contract. But if we can bite off each chunk and get it updated as we go, that within a year or two that we would have all the areas corrected that need to be corrected. Unfortunately, we can't just sit in a room with 4 people and say, yep, check, yep, check, yep, check. And there's a lot of other entities that are interested in what that looks like. And so working through that process so that we're transparent and we have the community support in it is time consuming.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So that begs the next question: what other areas do you feel should be looked at?
We've done a lot of discussion around the entire relationship between St. Vincent and EPD and the way the process is happening. We really have looked at the entire contract from start to finish, from the enforcement side, with a critical eye. I will be honest that there's not a lot about the enforcement side that has worked very well, or 15 years later is continuing to work for us. And I don't know that we've had people on any end that have been interested enough in really revamping. The program has worked well enough that it's continued to work, and so the revamps haven't happened. So we are in the process of looking at a different software program that will queue up what calls the police department needs to respond to alleviate the communication side between sending complaints back and forth. I really can't identify a specific area that we're looking at because we really have just had to look at everything and really look at how we can dial it in so that it's realistic, attainable, and works. And so we have a good team on it now of a contact with PDD that's vested and interested in making it right, as well as good support on the police department side. And St. Vincent is always just happy to be giving services and doing whatever they can. They're great to work with also. So we've got some good momentum now, which we haven't always had with folks that are interested in making this happen. And I think the Police Commission's interest and review of the contract and their policies and stuff has certainly helped continue to push that agenda, which is something that I've been pushing hard on for a while now. And so it's certainly been helpful to have these discussions going on here and some accountability to respond back so that you know that we've done it. I will actually be getting replaced as the sergeant associated with it here soon. As soon as that happens, I have offered to stay on for whatever it takes to help continue and finish this process, and will continue to be at least informed and updated, so that again, at least I can respond unofficially or at whatever time that the commission would like more information.
Anyone else? Scott or Marty?
I just wanted to ask, is one of the pieces that's being considered for change the possibility of responding to the complainant so they know what's happened? So that it doesn't look like we're doing nothing.
Yeah.
The police department's doing nothing.
I agree 100%.
So that is.
Yeah, certainly under consideration. Whether it's involved as part of the contract,
Right.
or whether it goes into a procedure for how the police or St. Vincent responds, one way or another, we need to do a better job of communicating with the people that are complaining before they've complained 100 times and they're really angry, which is usually when I wind up communicating with them, unfortunately.
Maybe sooner's better.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we did the joint meeting with the Human Rights Commission, I was here as a Human Rights Commissioner. I'm now the Human Rights Commission liaison to the Commission. there have been two subjects that were discussed of interest to the HRC. That was the issue of no consumption of alcohol or illegal drugs being permitted as part of the contract, as well as the issues with the explicit ban on any animals, except for a few instances where service animals are permitted to be allowed. So is there going to be any review of those parts of that contract as well in this discussion to be closer to alignment with the city's housing first policy?
I would have to review the contract one more time. I think there is a portion in there that talks about animals, and certainly that needs to be reviewed, even just for ADA laws and where we stand legally. The drugs and alcohol use was a decision that was made by St. Vincent, and I believe that they got the message pretty clearly at that last meeting that that was not in line with what the city's desires were. And I would say there's a good chance that if there's not language written in, that it will be pretty clear what the expectation is regarding that. Certainly, yeah. That message is clear.
Anyone else have anything? Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you, Sergeant.
You bet.
Thank you. So we're a little ahead of schedule. We seem to be doing that a lot lately. And so instead of taking a break, if everybody's okay, I'm not sure of Captain. This year. Okay. Then we'll move on to the body worn camera update. Captain.
Good evening. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the body-worn camera program in general, so I was just going to give a little brief history of how video has played a part in our agency. Back in 2006, we began the in-car video program that most people are kind of familiar with, where they have video in the cars that we see sometimes on TV and in the news. In 2012, we actually started having some of our officers test out body cameras. We had 10 cameras given to our downtown team. And then in 2013, we expanded that to include our traffic enforcement officers. And they were using two different types of cameras. One group had taser cameras and another group had VView, which is the same company that we have our in-car video with. Because of a lot of recent events, including Ferguson and other issues involving police and video, a lot of attention was focused nationally on body cameras. And we had already begun looking at expanding our body camera program when the Department of Justice issued a grant that we applied for back in 2015. And that was a pilot program to get more body cameras out to agencies nationwide. And we were looking at it basically to help increase our trust and transparency with our community, to build officers' confidence, to decrease complaints, increase compliant behavior by community members, as well as the behavior of officers when they know that they're recording, to document incidences and encounters. It can be used as evidence in criminal and civil proceedings, and to make sure that we're catching our officers doing the right things. A lot of times people forget that. And we can also use that video for training programs, so that if we find that we need to address an issue, may not rise to the level of complaint, but we want to stay ahead of the curve. So with all of these kinds of purposes and ideas in mind, we went and applied for the grant. And in 2016, we were one of only 73 agencies nationwide to be awarded the grant, and only the second, or one of two agencies in Oregon, the other being Beaverton Police Department. We got the maximum award for an agency our size, which was a $249,000 grant, which we have to match the funds with. So with that grant, we are looking at purchasing up to 190 cameras to be distributed to all of our patrol officers. We also have, in addition to the camera equipment, we have what they call back office software, and that's the kind of software program where you have to share our information, our access to the video to either forensic services or to prosecutors, defense attorneys, and so on. We also have to manage all that data and store it, and so that's the other significant cost that we have to look at. The body camera grant requires that you can only spend the money on the cameras. So we have to additionally look at where we're going to find the money for storage. We currently have a core team, selection team of people that are doing the grant management and the program management. That includes myself, Lieutenant Eric Klinko, Lieutenant Angie San Miguel, our financial person, Elizabeth Weber. We also have the city ISD director, Chris Dolman, is integral to this, and we have substantial help from purchasing, developing our RFP. In addition to the core selection group or the core management group, we also have a very large team that encompasses quite a few partners. We've got community partners, such as yourselves, that we've had involved in some of the initial process. We've had letters given by the auditor's office saying that they support this. We also have internally patrol officers, sergeants, lieutenants of all ranks that are helping us with the selection process. We have our records and data, evidence control people, forensic control people, all involved in the selection process, as well as our partners throughout the city, because this is impacting not just our agency, the police department, but the entire city and community. So with all of these partners involved, the prosecutors are integral to this. This impacts them significantly. We are going to be issuing RFP within the next week. And along with that, we're developing the criteria so that we can start to score and select the proper program. When we're looking at this, we're looking at making sure that we take into account our legacy costs, because we have policies that require retention, and this is evidence, and that storage just keeps building. So we're looking at calculating the cost of storage, the legacy cost, the staffing time and management costs that a lot of folks that we've been having conferences with people around the country are kind of surprised by that. So we're taking all of those things into consideration when we look at these programs to ensure that we have something that's sustainable, that's going to work for our community and meet our goals, as well as be fiscally responsible, because we don't want to have a program that begins and then run out of money in a few years and not be able to continue something that's valuable. So that's where we are today. Any questions?
We'll start a queue here. Steve, go ahead, you're first.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have several. So when do you expect the RFP process to be complete?
Well, we're going to be issuing in a week. We're going to have it close in 3 weeks. So by the middle of September, we should be completing our scoring. And we should have a final decision by the end of September.
Okay, and then after that, when would you anticipate rolling the program out?
The program should be rolling out at the beginning of the year. Part of the RFP is also going to include the implementation process, which also includes training, not just for the officers, but all the support staff. The prosecutor's office will be involved in that because they're going to need to have access, that kind of thing.
And you said it was 190 cameras,
Yes.
which is less than the police force, right?
Well, that's less than what we have in terms of total staffing, but that's about the number of sworn officers.
Okay, so pretty much you expected it to be rolled out to every sworn officer?
That is the initial number is 190, depending on the cost and with the storage. The 190 is including like myself as a sworn officer, but I'm not going to necessarily be in need of a camera every day, so we might have to cut back on the number of cameras, but have enough so that they're accessible to people like myself if I'm working, say, a football game detail and I want to check a camera out.
And that spills over into like some policy questions, like what's the status of the policy, and I'm sure you're going to have to develop criteria for who and when, and we'll be using, what's the status?
We have a draft policy. The union has it right now. I believe it has already been reviewed by this board previously. I had taken over the program in April, the end of April, so I was under at least the impression, I could be incorrect, that you have already received the policy. If that's inaccurate, I can let you get a copy of the draft policy to you. But we do have guidelines for when the camera would be used, how the officers would be required to advise people when they're going to be recording them, circumstances that they could turn it off, how they can view the video when it's appropriate.
Okay, and then one more for me. Will you be dripping this, or is it going to be full on? Meaning you're going to roll it out to a few test officers to prove it, and then greater, to the rest of the force, or all of?
We've had the cameras, the test cameras, basically a couple of units, the downtown unit and our traffic enforcement unit has already been using cameras for a while, so this is going to be a full implementation. Now, we may not be able to give everybody the camera and training, and tomorrow we're starting. It may be a staggered implementation, but it'll be over a relatively short amount of time.
That's right, as long as a fairly compressed period of time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add something? We will roll it out incrementally in such a way that we can stop rolling it out when our capacity to manage the program is reached. So we're not adding personnel.
No.
And this could take a lot of personnel time and records and in the evidence controlling, or the forensic evidence unit. So we need to be really thoughtful about having the ability to stop when we get there. And so we don't want the city's executive team to be burdened with an obligation to pay for something we don't have a budget for. We don't want the council to feel obligated to something they haven't planned to pay for. So it's going to be sort of a tricky matter for us in those first months.
Follow up to that.
Sure.
So that part of it, is that analytics going to happen during the RFP process, or does it happen now, or when will you know? So you said like the budget and supporting, sustaining, like these issues you just talked about, when will those issues be addressed or resolved?
We're looking at those issues now. It's very difficult to get too analytical with that, those numbers, because we don't know what that cost is until we get the information back in the RFP. So that's where part of that hang-up is. We're doing some calculations, but we just don't have enough information until the RFP is sent out and we get some bids back.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Sorry.
I have Bob in the queue next, but I want to make one comment. And Carter, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did have a discussion about body-worn cameras, and I think it was to help them draft the policy. But we can also, if we want to have a motion later in this discussion to bring that policy back to us, we can entertain that as a motion. So
yeah, and we will send you the current draft of the policy, and so the police commission can do it, please. And we'll send that before the next meeting.
Bob?
Yes, I was going to say we did review that policy pretty thoroughly. In fact, we made some changes and suggestions to it before it was sent to the chief after the draft was presented to us. So I know we voted to approve it with the changes we made. Not to say it won't need tweaking after everything's in place and we find out things that didn't work, but I like the idea that we're finally getting it implemented because it's been important. And my question would be, would the people who are not in public contact be issued a camera?
Currently, that's the way our grant application reads. But as the chief was saying, if we need to scale back, that's one of the areas that we can scale back in so that we wouldn't necessarily issue cameras to someone like myself or the chief to carry around 24/7, but that if we were going to have public contact and we knew in advance, we could check the camera out.
I was thinking in terms of investigators, are they detectives and so forth, are they going to be issued cameras? Are they going to be required to wear them?
Well, right now, they're going to be issued a camera as it's written in our grant application that was awarded. But again, they wouldn't necessarily be required to wear them when they're doing detective work. However, they would have that option.
Okay.
Now, if we find that it's not worth the expense to have somebody issued a camera that's not necessarily using it as often and we need to scale back, we could have cameras available so if they were going to have contact with somebody that they knew, they wanted to record an event, they could check a camera out, or if they were going to work overtime in uniform, they could check a camera out, that kind of thing.
Okay. And I think this has come up before, but supervisors will be issued as well, lieutenants, sergeants, so forth.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Do I have anybody else?
A quick question. So they're visible, they're plainly seen?
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the considerations for the officers when they're looking at, scoring when the RFPs come in is some of the things that, concern them is durability, how do they stick to the uniform, where they can wear them, but they are definitely visible.
Okay. There is a state statute that requires that we notify anybody when they're being recorded at the earliest opportunity.
And that's also included in our policy.
We have both Edwards that I got in the queue at the same time.
I'll defer.
Oh, great.
Does the policy that's under draft, or maybe there's already an existing, actually, let me rephrase. How does the policy that's under draft currently different from the policy that's under, in implementation for the officers who are currently wearing body cameras?
Well, the officers that are wearing body cameras are basically under the umbrella of the ICV policy, the in-car video policy, because there were so few of them, they hadn't come out with its own standalone policy, so that one's not out.
Okay. Does that policy, or does the proposed policy address the ability of officers to view in use of force situations and release to the public in use of force situations?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Edward?
Steve, do I remember seeing an email from you that there was interest, concern, something at the Civilian Review Board about the audio being switched on or off
Yes.
cameras? And I'm trusting that's addressed somewhere in the policy. We did see that here some months ago, possibly some years ago, so I don't recall whether that was in there.
That is correct.
In terms of, I'm sorry.
Officers turning the sound on or off on the cameras, and how that's addressed in the policy. We don't need an answer here right now, just know that that's in there, and if you're going to bring it back to us, we'd love to know that that is in there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, most of it addresses, a lot of times people don't mind being recorded, but they don't necessarily want to be seen on camera. For example, some of survivors of sex crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's options sometimes to shut the video portion off, but they can still keep the audio going.
About the vice versa.
So you know what, I would have to look back at it. I don't think that that's an option unless you just turn the whole camera off.
And then have Bob.
Yeah, I would recall that during that discussion, I remember very well, there were tactical situations where the officers needed to confer and consult in a situation that needed to determine tactics, and at that time they were permitted to turn
The mute.
yeah, to not having to share the audio portion, and I think there was another circumstance where they had to notify a watch commander and get permission or something, so that it's written in the policy, as I recall.
Any- Marty or Scott, do you guys have any questions or comments?
No, thank you. I do remember seeing when the audio can be turned on and off and the cameras in the policy that we reviewed last, I think, summer. But my question was this, in terms of the Olympic trials and other things where we have task force come in from other agencies, will the cameras be issued to those officers working those for compatibility with the technology, or have you given any thought to that?
Well, that hasn't come up yet, but if it's officers coming from other agencies, especially if they're being contracted by the venue, and they're not necessarily working for us, that would be something that we would have to address with the venue or with those agencies of those different officers. They wouldn't necessarily be under our umbrella.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Edward, Steve, do you want to get into? So I have Edward and I have Steve.
So just a question about that. These officers from other jurisdictions that are contracted to the venue, they're not doing law enforcement. They're doing security, crowd control, that sort of thing?
Well, that's up to whatever the contract is with the venue and what type of certification that they would have.
I guess I would just have a concern that if they're enforcing laws in Eugene but are not accountable in the same way that our officers have due to this lack of documentation, that seems like a problem more for risk services perhaps than for this department, but something we're thinking about, I think. That's all I have.
When we do contract with LCSO deputies, for instance, for football games, and if there's a complaint about a deputy, then the sheriff handles it. We don't investigate that complaint. Their policies apply to the way that they protect themselves. So their requirements, they don't have an auditor, so we don't require that an auditor review their internal affairs investigations that are generated out of the time when they're contracted by us. So it just, we don't have any contracts that impose our policies and our unique ordinances on other agencies. And the sheriff's office is issuing citations in the city, so is the state police, so is Springfield Police, and University of Oregon Police.
That's it. Steve?
Just to clarify the concern on the muting issue, the Civilian Review Board had reviewed a number of cases where the muting was not related to tactical or supervision, and there wasn't really like clear path of that expectation and what consequences might be in the event they muted it when they otherwise probably shouldn't have. And so that was the concern of the policy, and I think that may be one that we'd request to have to review.
Mr. Chairman. So that was discussed, and as it was pointed out, the current policy is operated on the in-car video, which does not specifically deal with that issue. The one that we saw was simply a draft and did include when you could and could not mute the device. So I think we're covered as far as answering that particular issue. But again, if somebody wants to bring it up again, we can, but we've covered it.
All right. Anything else? Anybody have any other questions? Okay.
I'm sorry, one quick question. This is, I'm brand new to the commission, so this is my ignorance here. So when the policy gets adopted, does that get adopted by council? Is it adopted by the chief? Who is it that makes the policy adoption?
The chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Edward, just for your, what we do, the commission can make recommendations on policies and changes, and then they're submitted to the chief, who ultimately implements the policy and decides on what the policy's final version will be.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Great. Thank you, Captain Meisel.
Thank you, and I'll make sure that you have a copy for your next meeting of the current draft.
So we are moving right along with our agenda. And the chief's report is our next item, but that was not included in the packet, and we do not have it online for us to show. So we will.
I could, during a break, I'll run upstairs and print it off, at least so that I have something to refer
So if you want to take a break, we
Okay,
can
so why don't we
come
take
back
a
to that.
10-minute break, and then we'll come back.
And remember, the recordings, for the new folks, the recordings all stay on, because it's still a public meeting.
Thank you.
It's a good reminder.
I had no idea. 10 minutes to get self-trained, self-listening.
Oh, yeah.
Literally 10 minutes.
Bob and Chief, how you doing? Will? Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Highway there, you're getting under that underpass. Because they stack up there.
I live in South Dakota. Yeah, but when I was, look at that Safeway.
I have sat from MLK.
You have a lot of deer up there.
Are we really?
A lot of deer. Duckers do now.
Bridge it over the back because the bypass to back up on the circle.
I got two possums, so it's a difference between there and
Big and long turn, but most of the time.
foxes, yeah.
My wife, I'm thinking her up.
There's refreshments right inside that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, little kids, yeah. Oh, and they stay on your deck. Do you feed them? They usually, they're good mouse. Well, there's a big.
Thank you very much.
Say goodbye.
And they're not nearly as...
How many times do you go to a community meeting?
They like that.
It's like an hour and a half. You got to get it done.
That's great.
I was at last work session. Maybe they can take some notes on.
Well, I saw one today where a guy tried to catch an alligator by throwing his coat over there.
Shut it down.
It latched onto his arm. I don't know what he was.
It's bound right. So you might
No, that's smart. Leave those guys alone.
have a great one.
Thank you. There's snacks in that next one.
Well, welcome aboard anyway. I want to say that.
I know they're all vetted.
What's going on in our neighborhood?
Is there anything in there you could choose? I don't know. Somebody see those things and like be from TV.
Well, I passed them in the stores, I can't have some.
We get
Oh, no, where do you go?
So I'm pretty sure that there's
We have probably 15 bushes in our backyard, and they were looking really good, and then they were looking really bigger. So somebody enjoyed them. Okay, I'm gonna go make sure we make a copy.
Yeah, so, but most people will. At some point, this wasn't something else.
But because they don't like
The vote on the restrictions was
I'm just wondering.
starts on my suspense with
They must have some
Oh, yeah.
physical.
They Bob and public knowledge.
Certain amount of.
They looked at
Part and parcel of what's going on. Because I bet
And I think there are a lot of people avoiding it because in their mind,
when I talked about
police riot. Really, the people who are actually driving it, I think.
Which I haven't thought about. Sometimes they don't drive like that. I took my bike, pushed it down, and then some policy about floating down. But I consider that policy. Back, you had the whole thing.
The other side of it too was, that's a way to also
the social justice warriors are really active. But people last summer, last 2015, there was a lot of Black Lives Matter protests.
I've ever been.
They took the sapphire in the middle, pushed me right off into the bridge. And so there were a number of issues where we had to
because at the time, anyway, I remember Sergeant Small, Matt, yeah, he made a number of comments about vehicles sure that came from Black Lives Matter thing in Missouri, and although some of the other things I actually voted for that policy. I thought about it a lot. It had all that stuff at the beginning, the introduction that said you have to negotiate, coordinate, do all that. But then when we got to action items, 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 4 was plugging people rubber bullets and tear gas. And I advocated at the time that we should step 0 to do all the same.
So I might also have
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, I'm not from here.
which I didn't know until I went to the board ceremony.
You saw that, yeah, you were there,
Close his thing. So,
so now the expectations are high because we have to say, they want you to keep it up, the more you do, the more you have. Where were you in?
But I did meet with him because I wanted to bring
And my wife's family.
before I got on the commission, we've
been visiting a couple times. So we decided he was that person who
and not
he asked me questions.
my sister moved to North Carolina. I was in North Carolina. Because we lived all
He sort of stood out, so I made a meeting with him.
her son lives in San Francisco. And her daughter lives in Illinois. That's all.
I'm not sure I want to outbid.
So I don't know why. And then it was like crazy hurry. It's hot, and I mean, there's sometimes that you go outside, and it's just that wet.
No, well, 4 years ago.
They travel so much. I think it doesn't matter. No thanks. I think I am going to go, I don't know, just see a lunch maybe.
Yeah, I sort of noticed in reading the packets, which is what I felt is the issue. There's sort of a consensus. So nobody's bringing up issues. Was that Carlos used Jesse used I support things that would be a concern to other people other than the ones they would
say has ISIS is more defeated on battlefields, they're going to shift more. Why stand to choose definition? You want to sit down and have a conversation. Elderly.
So how long have you been the? Oh, maybe I think it's This is nice though.
How
long have you been the liaison to the commission from the?
These are not quite a year, actually, but over 6 months.
Consider the last meeting.
So are we a fairly new commission then? I mean, in terms of membership, Bob?
I'm sorry?
Is the membership on the commission fairly new? So Terry's about 6 months, Steve's about a year, I'm brand new, Severio's brand new, Will's brand new.
So the older folks here are on the phone, but they're not really. They're only a couple of years off. Bill has been on a while, and Edward, of course, has been on the whole time as liaison. So yeah, we've had a big turnover. You're right. We have. A lot of times, commissioners apply for their next term, which I did, and was accepted. But there are the commissioners that could have this time just rotated off. So.
Also, Colorado.
Which is a significant commitment.
A lot of Americans.
It is a lot of time, but fulfilling in a lot of ways to be part of it.
But that was what he started with.
The city where you live, and you have to work and play.
Hey, I'm Edward. Jed McGuire. Nice to meet you. I'm the new Human Rights Commission liaison to the Police Commission.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'm here from the union.
Oh, okay, perfect.
We asked a while back to get and when we decided to stay, why are you here? That's what happens.
What's the union that you get that the officers belong to?
It's Eugene Police Employees Association.
Okay.
So it's a local.
Does it have a national affiliation? Or is it just strictly local?
Independent.
Okay.
A lot of folks don't. We had, back when our union was done, we had a lot of kids, producers, all the big.
We went through that too for a while. The 70s. They were recruiting police officers in the 70s. They came to us too, so they'd represent us for free and with no dues until they could get a contract. So we were represented for like 5 years. They gave up.
Yeah. Lane County Sheriff's actually were teachers for a while. The lawyer was never there. He never got any representation. They had to pay closing dues.
You know what? This is
we wouldn't have signed up if we had to pay dues. It was like, okay.
You're like, all right, you're going to get us something good. We don't have to pay
We're in the right to work state. Give us a contract, we'll pay dues. Sure, go right ahead. Knock yourself out.
When they tried to pull out, they actually had some outside guys come and try and. I was actually whatever.
You realize we're law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
There's some people you get scared.
New Jersey. They had a pretty tough lawyer in Richmond. And all he ever did was come and make the city manager mad at the meetings. He would just get in his face and get mad. And he'd end the meeting, and we never got anywhere. It was silly. It was a silly time. It really was. Sure.
That seems to be a specialty of the Teamsters, though, is making the people who they negotiate with happy.
I think they were looking at, their truck drivers are going to get benefits if they get a lot of cops in the union, but that wouldn't have made a difference. Well, you already know. They thought it did.
Straight along.
They're perfectly happy
Well, you got plans for the summer?
No, we're just hanging out. We're going to the concert Saturday at the Cuthbert.
Which one is it?
It's the Eugene Symphony.
Oh, that's right. My neighbor has a bunch of tickets.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in bed, though.
You should go. Oh, that's the best. It's going to be beautiful. And, the weather is going to be perfect. That's all. So usually it's so hot. One year we went, we never miss, so we try.
Oh, nice.
But one year we went, it was so hot. Oh, we had to stand in that line and wait to get in, you're cooking. Hey, Jen.
I haven't been for a while. I love it over there. So
How are you doing? It's great, especially when the sun starts to go down. It's nice and cool, and you got the music. It's really nice. And we used to go there once in a while for their shows too, because this is free. You get in line at the Pulse Center, you get free tickets. But we used to go there for shows, but lately the lineup, I don't even know who these people are. You can tell them a plugger, after you reach a certain age and you don't recognize the name of bands, who are they? What? Grandkids tell me, you don't know. That's listen to pop music, So this is pretty cool.
So you're, if I have the right person, you're a long-time EPD volunteer.
I am, yes. Since 08. Pretty good years. Yeah, it's been good. That's a good run.
It's been good for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm doing 3 different things now. I do cold case investigations. That's the new old homicide. And also reports from the Department of Human Services.
So you have to...
I read this report, summarize it into a paragraph, and enter it in database. And the third thing I do is Huckleberry Patrol, which is
I know.
graffiti. Yeah. Satisfying. That's really satisfying.
Yeah, I've often thought that would be...
It is. You get done cleaning, for a couple hours, and feel good. And sometimes we go back and ride over it, and it stays that way for a couple of weeks, and that's even better.
That's pretty good.
Effective almost to
come right back? Yeah.
Come right back.
It's a clean slate.
Yeah, exactly. They've been pretty good.
And you used to do the patrols, you were senior on patrol?
No. I started out because of my police officer. I didn't think that was
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I've done all this. I didn't know about that. Yeah, I was a police officer back in Richmond, Virginia, 29 years. And we retired. My wife's family was out there, so we moved out. And I started out working, because I wasn't quite ready to retire. I started out working at the federal courthouse. And I left there after court security program. Sure. And then I retired for good in 08. And that's what I've been doing is this. Got to keep yourself busy. Yeah, I think so. It's important.
I'm a retired professor of law. I have a little here.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
37. Law here? No, philosophy.
Oh, philosophy. Okay.
And I'm chair of the animal care skill. And so that takes up the service.
Is that for using what they use animals in science? They have an ethical.
Oh yeah. It's very serious.
That's great.
Essentially, this committee has control of the first week. And do the thing.
Very serious. Rights support.
Me too. That's why I agreed to do it. It's a very clean operation, I can tell you. And then I've been a CASA.
CASA? You were CASA?
I was. A little bit.
I can tell. I know when I see what they have to do, what they have to do. And my job departmental, I've always been able to do that, come home with, good attitude about my family. But I've had people do what I'm doing, and I
saw kids through the system for a couple of years. And then they started going to court and
all right, everyone, shall we get back
that's what
to our meeting?
How do you say no to any job? How do you say no? Yeah.
Good.
It's putting on. You should take it.
Bill was inactive.
It's going to help stretch the meeting.
Okay, so let's get back to our meeting. Everybody received a copy of the chief's report. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Carter, for getting those to us. So, Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, I'll just point out a few things. The chiefs in the activities page, UOPD Police Chief Search Committee is still doing its work, and it's a little different process than we use here, so I've learned a few things from it. It's their process, so I won't go into details about the finalists or anything, but I think they will have interviewed everybody within the next few weeks. The Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police and the Oregon State Sheriff's Association has put together a mental health work group to develop statewide guidance on response to people in mental health crisis. And so the two chiefs that are in charge of this whole thing are brilliant, because they put me in charge of one committee that's doing half the work and a different chief in charge of the other committee that's doing the other half of the work, and they're just supervisors. I know. Anyway, so I've got one committee is working on policy guidance, and we're talking about training. So this will be basic police academy training for CIT type training, and then advanced CIT training, which is what all of our employees or officers have received, and then also a decision-making model that the police academy would like to adopt that's used throughout the state. Let's see. There are a handful of people that are working on putting together a Eugene Police Foundation, and there's another meeting coming up next week. I attended in-service training, which is always a nice day. The Olympic trials security plan came off pretty well. In 2008, the first year we've had them for decades, the planning was enormous. I mean, we were ready for anything. The federal government invested a lot of resources here in Eugene to help us with that. It was only, it was only 7 years after 9/11, and so we were still pretty concerned about the unknown. So 12, we dialed back a little bit, and then in this year, I think we got a little lax in our planning and implementation. What ended up in the field, the security plan was excellent, but how we got there in the planning this year could have been better, so we'll take some lessons from that. And then the South University Neighbors Association, which is the next bullet on here, are concerned about what looks like a growing trend of loud and disorderly parties in the near campus neighborhoods. And our data show that there are more complaints this year than last year about loud party complaints. So we have fewer officers to go to those this year than we did last year and in previous years. So while we catch up on our staffing, we're going to keep conversations open to see what we can do differently. City Council passed the budget. Officer Randy Ellis retired, which was almost as big as the $470 million budget, but almost as important, I mean to say, not as expensive. And that almost the entire thing was paid for by donated dollars. But that was a great celebration for his nearly 46-year career. And then the city's hate and bias report is going to be out in a little bit, and so I went over that with the people who composed it. And then there's some news items on there. We approved this policy, and what you'll see on this page in future reports will be the policies that have been approved recently and those that we're working on. Sergeant Williams, who spoke earlier, he and I went over, and we meet routinely on the progress of policy development. So hopefully within the next couple of months, our policies will all have been converted to a new format that's a lot easier for our officers, our employees to use, and it'll be in a database that is much faster to access. So they'll be able to get those in the field, which has been a frustration for us for a number of years now. And then we've got a couple of things coming up. And then yesterday we had a press conference, Severio, and from representing LULAC, not representing the Police Commission, and Eric Richardson representing NAACP, and Mayor Piercy, Michael Kerrigan from CALC, and Eric Green from the Father's House, which is a Foursquare church in town, spoke. And the objective of this was, there's been a lot of frustration over the state of criminal justice in the United States, and I'm concerned, particularly after what happened in Dallas, that some mentally unstable person would, could react similarly here. It could happen anywhere in this country where there are so many people that are suffering from mental health crises. And so it was important for me, for that reason, to let the community know that we're already working together. We're in a pretty good place here in Eugene. We have some good awareness and competency training that goes on here. We have an extremely low level of force that our officers use when compared to other communities. And we're in a pretty good place here. So I wanted to assure the community of that. And I think this is just a time where folks need to, it's good to help people to be aware that community or criminal justice is a local affair. It's not really a national affair, which is to say that there's 800,000 police officers working for 18,000 different and independent law enforcement agencies. And so each of those has a different hiring practice. They hire different employees. They're looking for different strengths. They have different policies. They have different pay. They have different training programs. They issue different equipment. And although there are a lot of similarities, not everyone is progressing. Not everyone is reforming at the same rate as other organizations. So we're all sort of painted with the same brush when things don't go well, and so someone who is affected by what happens in law enforcement someplace else in the country is going to be affected by that. But the hope is that they can recognize that locally we're doing a pretty good job. We still have work to do. And so I think that was the purpose of the press conference. So everybody, I thought, did a spectacular job. And hopefully we got that message out there. And that's it.
Chief, anybody have any questions or comments? Bob? And Edward is accused. Go ahead, Bob.
I know that Chief Durr had responsibility for the Assistant Chief Durr for the CCTV program, pilot project. And of course, when he left, I'm sure it got reassigned to someone. But I wonder if someone could give us an update on that and where we are with that project.
Yeah, the policy was, I wanted to have that policy in place because this is one of those where you strike while the iron's hot type of subjects. And I don't know when we're going to put in a CCTV system, but when the money is available, I want to be able to do it. And since you approved that policy, neither the money nor the capacity to do the work has been available. But I think interest in making downtown safer is growing, and so it's a good thing we have that there. So no new movement, but we're ready when the opportunity occurs.
Thank you.
I have Edward G. and then Edward M.
Is there anyone at the table who doesn't know what a trespass letter is, the policy that was passed?
I don't. Okay, so this is probably is a program that's probably 20 years old or more, and the person who designed this is the guy that just retired 2 weeks ago, Randy Ellis. Very innovative gentleman, and what was the situation at the time, 20-some years ago, was that we would be called to the scene of a trespasser in the middle of the night. Someone would have driven by a business and saw someone standing nearby or sleeping under the doorstep or camping in the back parking lot of a business, and they'd call the police. We'd go there, and the only way to make an arrest was to call the manager or the property owner, have them come down in the middle of the night, sign the complaint, and then we could make the arrest if they wanted the arrest made. Was the only way to handle it. So we developed this program where if the property owner signs a letter, an agreement, then an officer can act as their agent when we see someone trespassing. It requires that the property be posted. There's no trespassing. The posting has certain requirements. And so in places where trespassing is particularly problematic and property owners absolutely do not want anybody on those business properties when they're closed, then we can make the arrest for them. And I don't know how many people have letters or businesses, but I think it's in the thousands in the trespass program. So now an officer will see someone trespassing in the middle of the night on a property that's clearly marked so it meets all the requirements. They'll check through dispatch if a trespass letter's on file. If the answer is yes, then they can issue a citation or make an arrest for them.
You don't have the letters actually posted on the premises? Because I know other cities do that as well.
I don't know. I don't think so.
That saves a step. Just a thought. Does the department or the city code or what have you have provision for the reverse of that, which is a business owner or a property owner who actually posts these people are okay to sleep in the doorway?
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah, just wondering, because some people, they have their favorites, if you will, and consider them sort of like a night watchman.
Yeah.
So, just a thought.
There are businesses that do that, though. I can think of one that has, I can think of a number, actually, where they allow people to live in their cars or in trailers and they serve as night watchmen.
Just seems like some documentation would save somebody a trip down there or chasing around.
Yeah. Interesting idea.
I would like to speak to the fireworks this year in South Eugene. Kudos to the city for not publicizing that the ban was not in effect, because a lot of people apparently thought it was, which was good for small children and animals and so on and so forth. On our block, there was somebody letting off M80s about noon on the 3rd, but every 15 minutes or so they'd run out of their house and throw one in the street. None of us could figure out where it was coming from. I thought, what the heck? Call the police. Maybe they've got a car that's available. At least come by and show the flag. So we did, non-emergency number. By sheer good fortune, car shows up within 5 minutes. She drives into the intersection that's been reported, kind of sits there looking around. A couple of the neighbors come over and say, okay, here's what's happening. He goes, well, you don't know what house it is. I said, how about this? You just drive around the block slowly once and go on about your business, which he very graciously did, and really was much quieter for the next 2 days in that particular area. So we got lucky. It was a good use of resources. Mail thefts, still going on in our neighborhood. We had a frustrating experience actually in video of a theft off of, well, my porch. And social media, wow, lynched the guy in the video long before he was ever identified by the police. It was, oh, that's that guy. We looked up the mugshot database, and it's this guy, and he lives 2 blocks down the street from you, and he's been arrested for theft before. And it was very frustrating for a lot of those people to not, they couldn't really grasp the fact that because they all thought it was this guy looking at the picture on Facebook, doesn't mean you can go out and arrest him for that. So there are still thefts going on. I'm not sure how to use that kind of video in an effective way. It may not be a conversation for this commission, but pertinent to the report is there's documentation, but isn't going anywhere in some instances. That's all for me. Edward?
Yeah, 2 things. One, coming back to the CCTV, and this is just a thinking out loud exercise here, but I know that the Downtown Eugene Incorporated group has their Clean and Safe Committee that's focused on safety downtown, and one of the pilot programs they've been running is actually a CCTV program, so you're probably aware of that, but there's been discussions there about what to do with that program and that technology, and so as they start to potentially phase that out, I don't know if that's an opportunity for partnership, but it's something that they're talking about what the future of that program looks like, and so I thought I would throw that out there as a possibility, innovative way to get resources. The other thing is, from the Human Rights Commission, there was a lot of interest and concern about the ongoing vandalism at Asian-owned businesses, particularly along West 11th and in that general area. A lot of appreciation from the Commission to the Chief and to Lieutenant Bills, who was heavily involved in that, the work that was done with APICAT as well, and actually eventually apprehending the suspect. Thanks apparently to Pokemon Go. Apparently fewer sworn officers and more nerds with phones is the solution to a lot of property crime. But we are, in all seriousness, very appreciative of the work that went into that and the seriousness with which it was taken. I think it was a reassuring moment for those business owners and for that community. And I know that the Human Rights Commission had a high level of interest, was extremely grateful that it worked out and was taken seriously. So I wanted to convey that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Marty or Scott?
No, thanks.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Okay, then we're coming to a close then, so we will open for any closing comments for any of the commissioners to make. I'll start out with Bob.
So I want to congratulate our new chairman and his vice chair and their first meeting, and doing a great job, I see, keeping the tradition and keeping the flow going. So thank you. I also wanted to comment and intended to comment tonight about, and my question about CCTV had to deal with the change in demographic downtown. I know we're working very hard, and as a commissioner, I can appreciate the innovative work that the police department is trying to do by partnering with other communities in a multidisciplinary approach to dealing with the problems downtown. Community court and justice court, or whatever it's called down there, and that they are going to, hopefully that will work. And I know it's early to even begin to suggest that it might, but I'm still very concerned. I do still volunteer downtown, and in my job, part of it is to go around in the area, and I'm witnessing fights and arguments and drug dealing, and it's still getting to the point where, you know, people. I wasn't watching so much the action, the park blocks. They decided to dump trash cans in the middle of concrete and set it all on fire. I guess that was something they enjoyed to do. But I'm watching the people as they go by, and I'm watching them look with apprehension, trying to get back to their offices in the middle of the day. And you can see that there's this pall that's been cast over the downtown area, and it wasn't helped any by a gang fight in front of the library, which ended up in shooting through a window, which could have injured or certainly killed anybody, a small child even. I just am frustrated with the fact that we don't seem to be able to make any progress, and this has been going on for many years. I've been here over 20 years, and we're still seeing the same kinds of issues. And the issues that worked for a while, the downtown public safety zone, those things went away. And it seems like once we get into that track and start having success, we back off. And then we have the problems. So my concern is whether or not the commission should be looking into what other things we can do for public safety in the downtown area. Because that should be our main concern, is the safety of the citizens that are down there. Both the ones that come in and visit us and the ones that work there. Not just talking about the people that live there. There's also people that, there are so many apartments now, there are people that live there and may not feel safe because of what's going on. Those are the issues that I'm concerned about. I know they're doing all they can right now, but I don't know if there's something else that can be done. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. I appreciate it.
Anyone else have any comments in the meeting? Scott or Marty?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, if that's everything, thank you everyone for your participation. I appreciate it. And have a good evening.
Thank you.
We're just going to do them all like this.
Good job.
Okay. That was kind of felt that we'd already talked about.